dear viewers. Welcome to yet another segment of the Citizens Chat Show here on Civic Space TV, where we delve into different matters on current affairs that collectively affect us as Ugandans. Now, today we are continuing the discussion around the Forum for Democratic Change, which we adjourned a while back. You will recall a few segments ago us having this chat in the face of a rift between two factions in the Forum for Democratic Change. Of course, one featuring the likes of Patrick Amuriat Oboy and the Secretary General Namdala Mafabi. And on the other side, we saw the likes of Semu Jung and among others. Later, these factions were denoted into the names where they're best. We saw the FDC Katonga, FDC Najana Nkumbi. Fast forward, we are here today discussing the manifestations of that beginning that we saw a few weeks ago. And yesterday, of course, on Tuesday, we had a national delegates conference convened in blurry circumstances, which is not the usual. And we are here to discuss the implications of that for FDC, but as usual, to the wider journey of democracy of Uganda. And to break down some of those issues with me today is, of course, a very capable panel and featuring new faces. And I hope that will also bring on board very refreshing insights to you, our dear viewers. And starting from the far right, we have Mr. Ochieno Joseph, not a new face here. I could call you Evergreen. Seasoned member of this panel.
Or Everred, to be precise.
Everred. Yes, Mr. Ochieno is a UPC Ideologue, but also a media personality. You're most welcome.
Pleasure to be here.
Yes. Next to him, we have Mr. Atuheire-Brian, who is an FDC, Forum for Democratic Change activist. You're most welcome.
Thank you.
Yes.
For seeing us here again.
I guess you're ever blue. But
no, this one's ever red.
Good man.
Yeah. We also have Dr. Bireete Sarah. You're most welcome back. And and your absence was felt here already that brief time. Dr. Sarah, of course, is the Executive Director of Center for Constitutional Governance. You're most welcome.
Thank you, and good afternoon, viewers.
Yes. And finally, the gentleman to my left, we have Mr. Otuko-Augustine, who is a Private Secretary to the President on political affairs. You're most welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation. It's my first time to be in this space.
And I hope it won't be the last.
But I've been a follower.
Yes.
I've been so much interested in Sarah's very toxic
Outbursts.
Yes, our dear viewers, and we hope you ably counter them. But of course,
or even better, to elaborate.
We have the honor of having Mr. Atuheire here from, I believe, relatively the inside, closer to the
trenches.
From the trenches. Dug himself to make it here. And we would like to, get into the quest right from you. What is happening currently at the Forum for Democratic Change?
We trusted the people betrayed us, and we're working along the clock to make sure we correct that. Because betrayal, even at friendship level, is not allowed. How about to a country that is collapsing like Uganda? How can we be in a bigger struggle to liberate Uganda from the fangs of the junta, and you tell us we also have to fight to reclaim FDC, which was formed as a platform to do that? Because the moment they when you can't betray with arrogance and impunity, and we look on, we cannot be fighting against Museveni who has guns, and we fear Mafabi and Patrick Amuriat Oboy because they have Chifesa and sticks. I've seen some reinforcements by the state trying to protect Nandala Mafabi and Patrick Amuriat. We are also working, now we no longer fight with Nandala Mafabi and Patrick Amuriat, we are fighting with Museveni. Yes. And we have fought Museveni for long, we cannot give up now. And since we can't give up now, it's actually an opportunity to rise up. And the people of FDC have been very resilient. That's what I feel. because the people that voted Nandara Mafari overwhelmingly and voted Amriat Oboy by about 60%, those same people sat and said no, they are no longer our leaders. And
This is on Tuesday.
That's on Tuesday. So that and the resilience was in the fact that no transport refund, no food, wherever, because where food was, you couldn't access. So literally people were both angry and hungry. And they could not understand what happened.
Yes.
I have seen many people comment about that delegates conference, like when you talked about it. You see, the party chairman of FDC has a lot of power.
Yes.
Even if he just wakes up in the morning and says, no, I need delegates conference, he'll call it. And my father knows that. And Nanda knows that. And they know it's constitutional. But because they know that the courts won't aid us, because also the courts are captured. So this is not a fight about FDC only. It's a fight to make sure that institutions work and on constitution. Like that, it's just an addition to our fight that we've been having with the Museveni and his people who captured Uganda and managed like a family estate. So even now FDC where it is, and don't say there's FDC Katonga, FDC Najanankom. FDC is one.
Katonga.
No. No. FDC is for the people.
Yes.
When the people so decide. Not when you have a headquarter. Like I've been saying all along. A party is not a headquarter, a building. A party is the people. What is the woman in Kanungu saying? Soro Karamoja. Karamoja, people think it's very far. And but we had 21 delegates from Karamoja funded themselves come here.
On Tuesday.
Yes, you can imagine. You could see all elderly men coming from all over Uganda, very, very bruised, because they have been betrayed and they trusted. But betrayal is part of these things. But unfortunately, we are fighting. Museveni has our political party now. So we must reclaim it first. We can't say we want to reclaim Uganda when we can't reclaim the party. We shall try to fight. But what cannot die is the mission. You can take a party seal, have a headquarter, but the resilience that is within FDC and within our supporters cannot just be erased because you captured the National Nkumbi using goons.
Mr. Atuheire, from the viewer's perspective of the public, most of what we get is newspapers, and normally when we see both sides, we see crowds. Crowds.
Where?
When we see Nandala, we see a picture with cheering. We see. So can you confirm that?
If Nandala is popular, let him go and hold short elections in Kanungu. Or let him go to Guru and arrange a meeting where he can go and stand and speak. He can't speak from anywhere. All you're seeing is headquarters where he has hired his goons, wrote some people in the registers that he has bought. Even those people that are National could leave him and come to us. When they surely know that Nandara can no longer move forward, doesn't have, because what they think is that we shall, in regard to Pondoka, then we join them and they take us in a Kurar, take us to Museveni and sell us like sheep. No. If we resist it, it's like people are going to be coming from the side to the side. And something I told him when he was leaving FDC, said even the people you were with in press conferences, I see them every day, I know where their meetings. You're going to go, he's my friend, you're going to go alone. This guy's going to come back to FDC. And people will come back to where people are. Not that Muntu was doing something bad, no, but it was irrational. That's what I told him when I met him. But even now, I know people who are with Nandara, but they are still there thinking.
Maybe they are collecting money.
They are still, but when the real drums, the sticks, start drumming, you ever go to the become we're going to its peg, and it's like that Nandara's peg will not have a goat. Yes.
Oh, thank you very much. Of course, it's still the rift is still very clear and strong. And,
there's no rift. There's no rift. You can't have a rift with thieves, thugs, who are stealing the party to take it to Museveni and call it a rift. No, they are betraying. There is a betrayal.
So they are traitors, and
they are traitors, and that's okay.
Yes. All right. Thank you very much.
No, I think it's fair for the guest to respond.
I'll give him time to reflect. But I'd like to bring you in, Mr. Ochieno. Of course, coming from the opposition, we would love to hear your views on what is going on at the Forum for Democratic Change. But does this remind you of UPC 2015, when Akena and try to usurp from the then chairman, who was Olaro Tunu. Does this kind of bring back, some of those memories within the UPC party?
Because I'm very keen to hear from the other end, I'll
Yeah.
stick to your question. Normally I wouldn't. No, actually, the only little similarity is the fact that there was contestation on whether or not Chairman Birigo had the right to convene a delegates conference. On the basis of the constitution of FDC, it would appear he does. And if that's the case, in the UPC's case, the constitutional mandate is substantially tilted and almost authoritatively onto the hands of the president. In fact, our party president is the chief, not like in NRA where the chairman is the guy from Kabamba. So Olara was president of the party.
Yes.
And had the mandate to call the delegates conference. He had called district council elections, which took place. Jimmy seemed to have had the majority of the delegates, although contested. And while Olara was mandated to investigate, accusations and allegations, Jimmy thought that Olara was hell-bent, possibly with some evidence, on thwarting his alleged route to victory, notwithstanding the fact that by 2015, it was very clear that Jimmy was very much comfortable with his darling Betty Amongi onto the corner of a dining table with Mr. Museveni. But notwithstanding that, on the basis of the authority of the electoral process, Olara had the driving seat, and so Jimmy, I don't know who advised him, but I speak to party members, and the motive matters coming the way my good brother Brian raises it. These things become very motive party issues, Sarah. So the UPC party members, who for their own emotional reasons felt that Jimmy was being denied this, and I think some of our elders disregarded that, genuinely felt very strongly that Jimmy was being denied his opportunity, notwithstanding everything else. So that's on the one hand. On the other, it was not only was Jimmy usurping this and even stealing elections using Museveni's money, but now how dare he now go ahead and usurp the authority of the president and break the constitution of the party that Milton Obote never did, and I'm the witness, Obote never did, play around with the constitution at any time. And so hence the impasse. So meaning therefore that Jimmy creating a mini delegates conference to elect himself and even create the position of a president-elect, which does not exist in our constitution, was quite clearly unconstitutional, and it was informal. And so it's sort of in direct opposite with FD. So ours makes it slightly much more clear-cut. Although, as I said, when people have power of other things beyond whatever, they tend to become very authoritative, they think they belong. And so that's sort of what happened. And it's not surprising that once Jimmy did that, the Olara side went to court, and court agreed with them in the interpretation of the party constitution. Jimmy, with a cheeky confidence backed by others, they went to appeal. They appealed, and the appeal took more than electoral term. That was more than the time Museveni spent, playing his games in Luwero, put together until 2020 when Court of Appeal finally ruled that Jimmy is not leader. So the matter was disposed of. But of course, not surprising, Jimmy continues to hold on. When you take that and then compare to what is happening in FDC, I hope then these things don't drag on in that way. And I think Brian is absolutely right as a young member of the party and as a young citizen that whatever happens in FDC, these matters should be resolved sooner rather than later. And I hope that it does not lead to a split. I have said again and again that the opposition in Uganda does not need more leaders. We actually need less leaders and focus, because the problem is the problem is an NRA dictatorship, and the problem is Museveni, who uses their money, public money, citizens' money for hospitals and schools and streets and potholes that Muhoozi can't even fix after coming to Kampala. To buy people. So that's sort of really the difference. But constitutional part is slightly much more clear. And the final point.
But in terms of the motive, because he talks of fighting off traitors, which was also, you remember that famous press conference where Olara Tunu accused Akenan, they almost fought at Uganda House in terms of motive of, protecting the spirit of the party against, say, co-opted, members. Don't you see like a very clear similarity between the two instances?
Quite clearly so, but as I said again, when party members come, every side will think they're protecting the interests of the party. And in UPC's case, actually, let me be the analyst here, that in UPC's case where there is an emotive element that Jimmy runs with in the name of his father, Bote's son, the section of UPC that does not read or listen or watch anything bad Jimmy does, even if Jimmy goes for a breakdance with Comrade Museveni over Bote's grave, they will just still see, oh, Jimmy, Bote's son and the future Uganda, things like that. On the other hand, anything else in some areas where Olara's side may not have done that very well, the section, the supporters of Olara who at the time felt very strongly, and I don't know whether I should bring it here. There's a small section, Sarah, in UPC who sort of never forgave Olara or ran with Olara and cases of Museveni, DP, and them in 1985 coup and pushed this thing. Very unfortunate, because while Olara came in as part of a healing process, I think the entirety of the leadership, the strategies, and all these other things, thankfully, I was an observer, and the advice I gave was neither here nor there. It was bungled, so it ended up creating much more bad blood than anything else. So what is it? This is basically clear the case, two sides that were really not listening to the other. The good thing is that UPC remains intact. The good thing is that beyond Olara, after his game went and retired, did his bid, the good thing is that where we are at the moment is that our constitution is surrounded but intact, and once that is we've done and resolved the leadership of the party, the primary things that hold the party together is very much alive. And as I said, from my experiences, including to today, much later, I'll be traveling up country to meet with members and attend events, including an unfortunate burial of a senior member of the party from West Nile, where that is Comrade Kamure. I think the future of the party is great, and the youth of the people, the party who continue to resolve themselves around some of these issues means that we have hope and expectations. And I hope our colleagues in the FDC, particularly the young guys in the FDC, we look beyond the personalities in this, and of course beyond the monies, and particularly if the monies are dirty money, and dirty money coming from Museveni's pockets, and his money coming from Museveni's pockets, not his savings from the money that we pay him, and we pay him hugely, but public pass, so that is dirty money, terrible money, completely unacceptable. Sorry, he gives himself.
The salary, he gives it to the
so it's pocket change. Pocket change. It doesn't change it.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Ochieno. And I would like to bring in Mr. Otuko finally. I hope you've reflected on. But then, in a nutshell, Mr. Atuheire alludes that most of these issues are coming from, I don't want to say your principal, but close to, from your side. And, this is the money, the bribery that is disorganizing the Forum for Democratic Change. Do you think that is the cause of FDC's problem?
But in addition,
or is it...
You can speak, but in addition, don't only talk about the money. They have also given Nanda... No, the security structure.
The good thing.
No, they have UPDF, they have ISO, they have police, have evidence.
Do you think that the state is the cause of FDC's woes, or is it just internal disorganization?
Well, thank you. We must first understand the historical aspects of political parties in Uganda.
Yes.
When you look at UPC and DP, the oldest political parties, Museveni was not in power at that time. But UPC in 1980 in Peche Stadium, we know, was it 80? I don't remember the exact year. The Secretary General disagreed with the leadership of the party. And it marked a turnaround in the life of UPC at that time. So in other words, contradictions in political parties have not started today. They have existed as long as political parties exist. Why? Because many individuals in political parties have different interests. You do not necessarily have to sponsor contradictions. These contradictions arise from the way the parties are governed, the interests of the people running these political parties, but most importantly, competition of leaders within the political parties. When you go to DP, for example, the departure of Semogerere marked a new era in the DP struggle, because Semogerere was an historical, but when you put him out, you can see what happened. There were a lot of contradictions. There was an aspect where DP was fighting with something they created by themselves, the UID. This is something they created, and it became a threat to the political party. They got into a fight. Nobody sponsored that. It was competition of interests within the political party. When you leave that and you come to FDC, the first contradiction, of course, we know, is when there was a section of people who were not agreeing with the way Besigye was running the political party.
Yes.
There was a group of elites within the FDC who said, we cannot run the political party like this. We must be able to be organized in terms of building structures, while Besigye was taking the direction of activism. And that marked the departure. So you find that at that time, Muntu became a face of a certain class of individuals who represented a different sense of ideology within FDC. So you realize that these things do not necessarily need to be sponsored. These are simply ideas that don't agree, the principles that don't rhyme according to the individuals. Why? Because also when you look at how FDC was formed, a combination of PAFO and the reform agenda. Reform agenda was simply a pressure group. While you had PAFO,
even PAFO was a pressure group
yes,
of MPs.
Yes, yes. While you had the PAFO that had a different agenda. It was based on policy and pushing interests that they felt the movement system was not offering well. So you realize that PAFO represented a different kind of narrative, because once PAFO decided to marry with the reform agenda to form FDC, there were those that disagreed and said the style of reform agenda was not ours. So for that reason, therefore, we are not going to join FDC. So those who agreed with the Besigye's kind of thinking were able to leave PAFO and join the FDC. Those members of PAFO who did not agree ended up falling back to NRM. So you realize that these contradictions over time have been existing, and today we are in another era of contradiction. It is only
so without NRM or government, they are already contradictions.
Whether Museveni is in power or not, there will be contradictions in political parties. Why? Because individuals will always have different interests.
Yes.
And to me, that's my thinking. What only Museveni provides, his existence provides.
Money bags.
No. What his existence provides is an opportunity for a section of a group in a given political party that wants to outsmart the other. It becomes easier for you to blackmail and
So
be able to
Take advantage.
take advantage about Museveni's existence. These people are friends of Museveni, but because they believe that in their political parties, they do not want anyone who associates with Museveni, it becomes easier to fight that group.
But
I honestly believe, if you looked at the events, maybe before you,
yes, please.
If I looked at the events within the FDC, these are issues that would actually be resolved. You have very senior leaders of FDC, and Besigye being one of the senior leaders of FDC should have not taken a side. In my opinion, he should have stayed aside and listened to all these factions and been able to resolve these issues behind
They are
the
not
curtains.
factions. They are betrayers. Like I said, they are traitors and fighting for the country.
You see, we can say anything, but we can't be able to prove it, in my opinion. So it's my humble opinion that the elders of FDC have failed because they should have been able to intervene on these matters much earlier. We have contradictions even within NRM. And whom would we blame to be sponsoring the contradictions within NRM?
What kind of contradictions? Give us an example.
I'll give you an example. There are a lot of fights within NRM. I may not necessarily point out.
No, the public.
But there are a lot of factions within NRM, and these factions are rising because of competition of interests within the political
Can they contest for president?
And what helps us is that most of the time we are able to resolve these issues within the structural arrangement of the NRM, where you find sometimes Alhaji Chigongo is able to formulate as a chair of the disciplinary committee, is able to give audience to most of these individuals, and where the president has time, he has been able to give audience to some of these individuals. So in my thinking, I think the internal mechanisms to manage contradictions is where FDC has failed, because contradictions, whether Nandala and Amuriat left today, tomorrow they will still have contradictions. Maybe it will be Semuju versus the mayor, because there will be different interests. Maybe Semuju will be thinking he wants to be president. So I think the most important thing for me is the mechanisms used to manage the internal contradictions.
Yes, I think that's fine. If you don't mind, what about the, if you like, the hands of the state? You know,
No, well,
are you saying you don't
see,
know
the state
about
has a constitutional duty to protect all citizens, and I can tell you several times when there are warring factions and there are those that have followed the law, the state will protect the law.
How is it deploying Kanyamas?
No, I do not know about the Kanyamas, but I'm answering the question of the state. So you cannot delink the state from the politics. The state will always participate where it is invited.
So
for example, if for example there is a faction that has run to court, they may not necessarily be right, but legally they have taken the right channel to lodge their complaint. So it would be prudent for another faction to say, let's follow the law and let the outcome of the law guide us. Now, where the problem comes is that where we want to operate outside the prisms of the law, it becomes problematic.
Yes.
That's how you can now start saying that Nandala has soldiers. In my view, he does not. Why? Because the people who petitioned the court was actually not Nandala. And when the order was issued, it is only in order for any state agency to be able to protect the orders issued by court.
On the claims of money?
That is my
On
opinion.
the claims of money? Allegations of money?
I think he answered that, said that cannot be proved.
I mean, you see, the claims of money can be said.
Claim.
The claims of money can be said by anybody. That can be said by anybody. When Muntu disagreed with Besigye, the claim was that Muntu was funded by the state.
Nobody said it.
This was it. This
has been talked in the press conferences. It could have been a rumor, but this one is talked about. This has never sat anywhere. And accused any of their members or their leaders for getting money. The first person they accused was Nanda.
No, maybe
on a press conference. It has never happened in FDC.
No.
It has never even happened.
You see,
I think for
even when Muntu was departing, he clearly said that
The issue
they were
was
calling
that he
him
was
a
a
mole.
mole, but not money.
But also nobody said he's a more. Nobody addressed the press conference. It could have been talked about.
I think that is really up for debate. And he stated earlier that cannot be proved, but also made it clear that on the other arms, the court and the security, these are still citizens, and the state has a duty at all of them, if I got that right.
Yeah.
But I would like to bring in Dr. Bireete.
After suffocating me for a while.
You've had Mr. No. I was leaving you in a privileged position to weigh in on all of their submissions. But after Mr. Otuko's very persuasive submission, I'd like to hear your...
Must be, actually, Otuko's submission is lucrative.
your,
Yeah, I
your
know,
opinion
yeah,
on
yeah,
the
thank you
FDC
very
saga.
much. I will start with our guest for today.
Yeah.
Governor Augustine is trying to be very creative in his submissions.
Yes.
So I want to talk about the contradictions in parties
Yes.
that he says. I'm happy that he used the word that they are not necessarily sponsored, meaning that he does not rule out the sponsorship. But so using his choice
my
of
brother.
words.
I will answer that later. Let me allow it.
We're going somewhere.
So I want to use his choice of words. He
Yes.
referred to the Kakonge Nigeria controversy.
Yeah.
Yes, and it was a matter of principle and the contradictions were known. Yeah, so it's not that it was a myth that people did not know. The disagreements had happened in government and then later the arrests. So when you compare with today's kind of contradictions in parties, and it's important to underscore the fact that these contradictions are not unique to FDC. They have happened in UPC, they've happened in DP, and we know the playbook and the author of that playbook. So when you go to UPC, which Joseph talked about clearly, you look at the Akena arm and even their participation in cabinet. It's no secret, and it doesn't need investigation. It doesn't need investigation. It's like a pregnancy. Yeah, everybody can see the hand of the state in UPC and the actors. Even
And the results.
Yes, and the results. UPC is completely dysfunctional until it's liberated from Mujima Akena's mortgage to the regime. When you come to DP, it's another pregnancy out there for everybody to see. We all know where Chairman Mao is today. We know Seranda where he is. We know the vice president and the contradictions with the NEC, his own NEC and National Council that have denounced him. And how dysfunctional DP has become. So it's no secret. So if Mr. Otuko is saying that when contradictions come, then Museveni throws his hook, fish, those in the contradictions. But the contradictions happen after the hook has been thrown in the parties. It starts as a rumor, then just like I've said, and then being female, I understand the pregnancy very well. Until everybody, then it becomes obvious. So for UPC and DP, it's obvious. The Federal Alliance, it's obvious. The president and vice president were.
Do you think it's also
swallowed.
obvious for FDC?
So when it comes now to FDC, and the same playbook is being implemented, it does not need investigation. It just needs logic to say that, okay, and this is following, coming at the backdrop of statements by President Museveni himself. In February 2011, it's when he stated that he will eat Besige like samosa. He repeated the same remarks after 2016 elections,
By 2021.
saying that he will finish opposition in 2021. I want to underscore the fact that Article 75 of the Constitution prohibits a one-party state. But President Museveni's mindset is a leader who wants to rule in a one-party state by killing all opposition parties. And that is unconstitutional. But his actions, his mindset, we are in a leader whose time has passed. That even the 90, that is even his mindset is not fit for the 1995 constitution, even after it being fractured. He's pushing for a one-party state that is prohibited in the constitution.
Yes.
So when you look at what is happening in the FDC and the recent events of especially the Extraordinary Delegates Conference and the Competing Delegates Conference, the FDC constitution is being usurped by the team at Najana Nkumbi. Articles 28, it's called sections 28 to 31, are very clear on who can convene a delegates conference. Subsection 1 of Article 28 says a chairman can convene a delegates conference if he decides, without even any reason, even if he got a bad dream. We have had a situation where a leader dreamed and then expelled the people in this country. So even if a chairman got a dream that a delegates conference should convene, the party constitution empowers him to convene without any consultation to anyone. The other subsection
Almost
ground.
Mr. Museveni runs NRA.
No, but there is that provision
enough,
because
yes.
that's a superior leader.
Yeah.
In case a leader is supposed to look far like an antelope ahead of other leaders,
Yes.
if he feels there is something that needs the supreme organ to convene and take a decision, you should have leeway to do so.
That's right.
And that's why our chairman is always elderly. We don't elect young people to be chairman.
Yes. So the second ground is if there is a petition
Expected.
by members of NEC and the half of the district leadership, then he can also, if it's petition, he can convene.
Yes.
Yeah. So in this case, he was petitioned by more than 2/3 to convene a delegates conference. So the argument by Honorable Nandar and Muriat that they were not consulted, they were not, it is all excuse of somebody who is daring about an action or to fulfill the agenda. It's common knowledge that it's Brian has talked about UPDF, but I knew Nandara has a bodyguard at the rank of ASP.
Who escorted him in this meeting.
And he has been having this bodyguard since for a long time. So when
So
you
what
have,
does that mean?
wait.
But
So how? Why is he entitled?
But someone could say he's a citizen.
Is he entitled?
No, I mean any citizen
No,
can
no,
apply
no.
for security.
Is he entitled? Yes or no?
Yes, he is,
Why?
as a citizen.
After application.
No, you should know that Nandala has held different positions.
I know the positions he has
in the
held.
floor,
He
in
must
Parliament.
apply. It is
And
not an
yes,
automatic
that is it,
entitlement.
that is it.
That's
So-
what I said after
so
application.
Yes, so how do we know?
But is
that
there-
he
Okay,
did
so
not
after
apply?
application, who will give you this top rank of police as a bodyguard?
Not the.
Not an ordinary policeman. Who will give you an
Judges
ASP as a bodyguard?
No, I do not know the rank, but
I am telling you.
The point is, every citizen,
Isn't
including all
okay,
of
but
us
who
here,
will give
as
you
long as you
a
have a risk
senior police
and you apply
officer
for
with
security.
so much training?
Maybe his risk is
with so much.
Maybe his risk. I mean, his previous work, demands that level. Of
I mean-
What
security.
private work?
Which work? Being a chairman of PAC, is he the only one?
What Uncle Fra was the rope.
Honorable Barsa also was the chairman of PAC.
Yes.
Does she have SP
Wasn't she an LOP at some point?
Who?
Nandala?
Yes, but even.
But even Professor Atugo was rope. Does he have an SP
No, I mean,
Very
guardian?
good
maybe he has
was.
not applied.
Winnie Kiza was rope. Is he the only one?
Maybe he has not applied to retain.
No. Okay, let me make my point.
Yes.
So
Yes,
when
yes.
you have that level of abuse of police, because even if he was to get bodyguards, it's not that rank. That's the point I'm making.
Okay.
It's not that rank. That is a senior rank.
Could be ministers.
Where Ugandans have invested money that should be planning for the work of police, not running around carrying the handbags of a sell-out politician. That is direct abuse of state institutions. So, and it's even abuse of this police officer in question. That is a highly qualified rank, not to be doing handbag business. So that, this discloses the motive and the people behind the confusion in FDC. When you look at the behavior of police, the first time when the chairman, Ambassador Bireete-ED, was held siege at police headquarters for a full day,
Yes.
police was just around. Their vehicles were around the building. They did nothing. Bireete-ED made distress calls. Everybody made calls. The same Jew, they were calling police. No action.
Yes.
Until the poor man at 75 was forced to climb
Journalists were beaten.
a fence. People were beaten. Journalists. Police was there watching confusion.
Nobody was arrested.
So how do you define that inaction of police just parking around, spending taxpayers' money to guard chaos. Kanyamazi beating people, beating journalists. Police is in watch. A chairman is sieging his office. People are making distress calls, no action. The third evidence that shows the hand of the state is the conduct before the meeting on Tuesday. Police tried to break the meeting.
Not broke the chairman.
No, yes. Ambassador Abirugwa's delegates conference.
Yes.
So police issued a circular saying, we have got information that the Secretary General is not aware and we are not allowing the meeting to take place. Police has no such power. That was another evidence of abuse and manipulation in the FDC confusion. When we challenged it on social media, then Nandala got his supporters to run to court and obtain injunctions against themselves. An injunction cannot be issued against a person who is not a party. So Ambassador Abirugwa, knowing that the subject matter concerned him, tried to apply to join the court process. And they refused him to join. So the injunction was issued against Nandala. It was not issued against Abirugwa. And you don't block a concerned party. That also shows the hand of the state. So when you have all these dots connecting, then there is no way you can compare the controversy in FDC with the Binjira controversy. You cannot.
Yes, thank you very much. And Dr. Bireete, diagrammatically puts it as that of a pregnant woman. And of course,
pregnancy cannot be hidden with hands. It's an African saying.
But on the same, I'd like to bring you back, Mr. Atuheire. Of course, we saw the court session with Justice, I believe it was Esther Nambayo.
Who handles all cases in under text court.
Okay.
Yes, there's no case you could take against an under court.
Do you think that is a case
and he's from the region.
She's from what?
I mean, there's the argument that, well, that is her interim injunction was in public interest because there were two sides, and the fact that it's interim means
it
just
was
halt.
one side.
She has not refused, but she's halting for the general good.
It was one side.
But of course the sentiments out there are different. What do you make of her?
First of all, we are fighting to liberate courts and FDC. Courts are captured, like FDC is being captured. So your problem is you're trusting a court process in Uganda. It's your biggest. It's the problem that elites have. But like she said, the person who is supposed to call the delegates conference was not reported. The people who reported, I know them. People in court, I know them. Oh, I know Wante, I know them. It's like me taking a case against BCG to court to get a court injunction, stopping later to do something. Really, people who have known how I have supported him, they will be suspicious. Say, if it was me going to court, it would have some meaning, but can't be Wante taking Nandra to court and Patrick Kamliat. The same Wante was on a press conference in Najana Humbi. It's like going to court against. So the injunction was against themselves. So the case had no resistance.
It was one side.
I don't even think there was even an argument in the court. Because otherwise you should be telling me what they submitted. And the media was just from covering the proceedings. You know that?
No.
Did you say you would only say a document? No media appeared. Nobody allowed them.
We saw Nandala and a crowd, cheering him out of the court.
Yes. But do you know what they said in the court? See, these things are public things, so do them publicly, please. Don't do them in hiding. And that's why I think even that judge can't face the public. She's a problem, but she's not the only problem. You see, and that's what Nandala wants us to do, to be in courts with him. So we postpone the delegates conference, then be in courts with him as he does his coup role at Nkombi, using his first guns.
So you're saying the nomination as is going on would have continued. Would be his motive.
Now, I want to tell you one thing. The FDC delegates conference can actually sit and cross FDC. Do you know that? The FDC delegates conference can sit and even cross FDC and open another party, or say for us to have crossed it. So when it sits, That's the supreme organ of the party. They could dodge around, but they know they will have issues. And what Augustine, you know what happened on Tuesday? Why police blocked Katonga, both sides. Their interest was not blocking the delegates.
No, they were blocking because it's the only authority to convene.
So they knew he has been in Usabara, he's blocked in Usabara. So, and he's there, we have seen him, so he can't leave. So, what you do, block Usabara, he just shouldn't leave, but also block Katonga if he leaves Usabara.
There's that photo of him on social media hopping over a wall.
Yes.
What was the context?
The context was that Katonga Road is upper. There are other two there is a residence and also there is a hospital. So Birigwa came to the hospital and said he was sick. But you see, it's not, many people don't know how he looks like. Yes, when you see him in the news, you know it's Birigwa. But if he walks into a hotel or a room, a nurse who's not politically active cannot know that this is Birigwa actually. So he used the hospital, the clinic, I think, then jumped into an empty residence. Then he was helped by young people to jump and enter there again. And I saw Power calling it comedy. When he was spending himself on a face with the ash or something, I saw him and he was on food. He wasn't happy. It wasn't comedy. He wasn't happy at that moment.
Yes.
Now those ones who are still fighting against Museveni are doing comedy. Because Femi has stopped fighting Museveni, so it's okay. So it's comedy.
So are you really saying that Ash thing was an act?
No.
But so had he sold off at that time?
No.
That's why I'm asking.
No, he hadn't. At that time, he hadn't. And at that time, Mafabi was working hard that Power remains in the election. And FDC should not support, should not work with NUP. After that, when I was given to make sure FDC doesn't work with NUP. These things of Semogere calling these meetings at the Africana were meetings that Nandara could not even attend. He was against them. That meeting of General Muntu, Bobby Wine, and Amriat. Those are the things why Museveni gave him money to make sure that wherever there is a key.
Why do you think it's only Museveni who can give Power money?
Not Power. At that point.
Okay, Nandala. Why do you think so?
Because he's don't interest.
It's in his interest to.
It works for him. It's
well, I don't know.
Augustine, I don't have Augustine, I don't have to give your wife money for food at home. I don't. It's not my interest. If I start doing that, then there is a problem. And you see, our wife was given money from another family. That's our problem.
Yeah, I just want to say something.
Yes,
to become very.
You know, Augustine, I was genuinely very, very anxious that you came in early because you're a first timer here, and then two, you come from a very important office, which is a public office, and it's the office nearest to Mr. Museveni. So sometimes possibly nearer to Museveni than Comrade Awichi, whom I have helped reserve this seat for. And the matters that play are extremely important for this country, and particularly important for a younger generation that here technically includes yourself. So when I come into these debates, it's usually beyond myself and UPC, and it's generally very much about the future of this country. And what's really at stake is huge. I would normally want to suggest that I think we all know the truth on the four of us here. Genuinely know the truth, you know. And for me, I'm partly limited by my seniority, you know. I'm partly limited by my responsibility and my position, and the fact that it's actually responsible for me to be an enabler as part of the solution rather than being part of the problem. And here, some of what we tend to do, normally when I come to civic space, as I came to understand it, is really that we are here to try and find, you know, maybe almost find together a solution to make sure that we push ahead. All of us with whatever kind of hands we have, and none of us have got clean hands. So these debates, in my opinion, are debates that sometimes, even when we have to point fingers because it's a matter of fact, we do point fingers not to score points so that we go home saying that we had a good day at work, but rather that we've managed to unearth or to make less the burden of national challenges facing us in the future. Clearly, there was money in this thing, and as I have said before, as many of us have said, no side generally is innocent. How do we help this process to go through? Sarah partly actually holistically answered the question of the contradictions, internal contradictions within political parties. But I just want to conclude that particular bit because it's extremely important, as you said. In fact, internal contradictions in political parties are world over. And indeed, they're healthy, as Brad says. In fact, political contradictions, as of we talk today, while I was giving yesterday, around the same time, a media commentary on events in other parts of Africa, I was watching what was happening in America, including a Trump extremist. And you see, an old political party that particular our friends in NRA like to talk about. See, America, 200 years, they're still strong things. So this is shocking. After 200 years, Americans, there's somebody in America who can think that Donald Trump can come back after all this mess. That is fine. That's democracy. I am a life voter of the British Labour Party. Got internal contradictions today. And thankfully, whatever happens, they're going to win elections against the British Conservatives. These are them. But back to Uganda, part of the earliest contradictions was with Kaihura's fathers, and it was a money thing. But that money thing was ideological money, where it was coming from. Is it money from communist whatever, who's funding our Cairo offices those days? These are some of the things that led to the 1959 expulsion of the father of Uganda's nationalism, Ignatius Musazi, who comes from that Luwero that Museveni went ahead to desecrate. So, but, those are important. So ideological, as Sarah was trying to say. Fast forward to the 1964, I think, a question, it was with Ibingira and Kakonge. Yeah. Those contradictions were ideological, left, right, center. Yeah. True, again, there's allegations of money, claims of money, again, coming from CIA, what is it to inject? So these are things which basically need to accept. What is the purpose of this money? Is it money coming from an average pressure group in the UK or an average pressure group from Karamoja that wants me to lobby for their goal to be protected? All this kind of. So these are ethical things, but they will still be political. We need to accept those things. The latter bit of the post-60s, is it about republicanism or what, conservatism in the UPC? And those things do happen. Fast forward with the Cecilias in the early 90s, had the Cecilias playing dilly-dallying with Comrade Museveni. I was a young guy.
1980. He brought it up.
No, I think actually he was actually referring to 1964. Let's talk about 1980. So even the early 90s, should we participate or not participate? Now that then becomes a contradiction around strategy, less about ideology. All those things are acceptable. But when those things do happen, and what is said, the father of this nation said to us, and it was fantastic. He said, and I remind his son, my good friend Jimmy, what concerns all must be discussed by all. And Jimmy, when convenient, we used to talk about it with him to taunt other people. So this is a national thing. So when we come down here, it's not about putting FDC on the spot, or perhaps being in defense about NRA. The NRA, why I put you on the spot, is partly because you hold an important office, but two, because that is actually where our big money is. The monies which are being suggest, if true, they're basically public money. And one of the reasons why it is bad is that if then we must continue to talk about contradictions around money rather than and a monolithic personal merit polity rather than issues, we are not going to go anywhere as a continent. And for me, you guys, I'm a grandfather. But for you guys who still have to go ahead and look for the best of whatever, it's a tricky thing that you guys, when Museveni retires to Rakitura, when is the next job? And where are our children going to go to Makere? Museveni, this guy who nobody knew him in 1970, that is 10 years before 1980, went ahead and worked in the president's office. Nobody knew him, just a civil servant, get whatever, and then he works down there. No, nobody did him a favor. Because nationally, we simply say that get your degree, we shall give you a job. He wasn't even in UPC. We don't even know where he came from. And actually, if he was Museveni of today, he would not even have afforded to study in Tara school. Who would he today? Today, he wouldn't. But thanks to UPC, we did that. I am saying, if that is the Museveni who did that, that Museveni should not be responsible for creating a situation in which there's a political impasse, where his dogmatic Marxist thing of 1970-71 in Dar es Salaam with no partyism, and Sarah, you're right, because he's not a believer in comparative polity, should not apply. Communist China is now the global #1 power, Communist China. And Communist China is like that, and those of us who think politics of the left can't be embarrassed that today our shops and our streets are being done by Chinese, and that engineers from Lao, engineers from Achole, engineers from Rushoroza, have no hand in determining where the rail line is going to take. And one, because political leaders cannot sit and have a conversation of big economics based on policy, strategy, and ideology. Those are the problems. It is urgent that the FDC sorts out itself. It is urgent that FDC leaders of my generation give opportunity for competitive ideas so that the likes of the brands are able to emerge. With yourselves, so that we sort out a post-Museveni mess in which we're able to rebuild the future of Uganda in diversity, in pluralism, but also in political competition.
Thank you.
And freely.
Well, I don't know.
Thank you.
I don't know whether I'm supposed to respond.
We will get to you immediately after the break. Thank you very much for that chronological discourse. I think it will really useful for our viewers, especially the comparatives. But right now we are going to go for a brief break, and when we get back, we will continue with this discussion, widening it to our collective future, of course, as Ugandans. Stick with us for the second segment.
The Citizens Chatroom happens every Friday at 2 p.m. on Civic Space TV Online on Facebook and YouTube. We invite you to be part of this conversation. Civic Space TV, freedom always.
Our dear viewers, welcome back to yet another segment of this Citizens Chat Show. And today we are, deliberating on the FDC Conundrum. There was, as discussed earlier, Delegates Conference on Tuesday. We do have an interim, president in the person of Elias Lukwago for the next 6 months. Simultaneously, we have an election going on the other side of town, and where nominations are being picked by different people. I got to know yesterday that Moses also picked forms. And yes, so we are continuing to discuss this discourse about the Forum for Democratic Change and what it means for the future of the party. But of course, like Mr. Ochieno said, what concerns all must be discussed by all, our collective future as Uganda. And I would like to come back to you, Mr. Otuko, to start with. You had what the colleagues said, describing NRM's intervention in other parties as a pregnant woman, a public secret that you cannot necessarily hide. Do you stick with your line that this is just a burden of incubacy, that the coincidental presence of Museveni is the reason parties are blaming all their weaknesses on the NRM?
Well, I do not agree entirely that contradictions of political parties, as I said earlier, are sponsored. There may be instances where...
But you have reached some
No. Yes, I'm saying this because it depends on the interests. But I do not agree entirely with the view by my colleagues in the studio here that this is entirely sponsored. When you look at, first of all, how in the year 2000, 2005, were we ready for multi-party politics? I have debated with many people about this, and I have a thinking that probably we did not prepare enough because we did not put clear parameters within which we were supposed to operate as political parties. We kept along the way realizing certain gaps that were not streamlined at the time we departed from the one, I do not want to call it a one-party system because the movement system. Why why don't I call it, why
One
do
party.
I not call it a one-party system? Because even during the movement system, there were voices that were dissenting against the movement, and they were freely disagreeing. The emergence of people like the Lukwago, the Odongotos, the likes of Norbert Mao, they emerged through the movement system, and they freely disagreed with it. So under a one-party system, you don't disagree with that, with the leadership of the country. So I think we missed an opportunity as a country to study this thing called the movement system. Because under the movement system, you realize that even the quality of politics at that time, you had the best leaders in terms of debate, in terms of their view, how they perceived the country, and also the direction the country was taking. That is 1986 to around 1996, for example. For the 10 first years of the movement, the curve of development was going up. Then eventually, around 2001, 2001, when the debate, like the ambassador Nelson Ocheger was on one side saying we need to open the political space, while there were those that were saying, no, can we study this movement system and be able to modify it so that we elect individuals based on their character, and even if they disagreed with the ruling group, they can be able to be in the movement system and disagree with them on the floor of parliament or in any platform. And I think, to me, as a Pan-Africanist, I think, in my opinion, we missed an opportunity to grow our own form of democracy, where we are able to disagree, but while serving the country. If you also looked at the level of corruption at that time, the level of corruption was very minimal at that time. Why? Because under the movement system, you had the ideological training, the chaka-mchaka. Of course, many people disagreed with it because they thought they were militarizing citizens, as the IMF and World Bank were alleging. But there is no country in the world that has progressively grown without ideological orientation of the citizens. And I think
But you still do your champanzi things.
yes, we do, but in small scale.
They can't
Because
prevent
originally, government was directly funding programs across the country to be able to make it mandatory for all of those citizens that had ambitions, or those that were willing to serve the country, to go through these processes. I mean, if you looked at our neighbors in Kenya, they may not have the chaka-mchaka that the movement system had. Maybe we could have had an opportunity to modify our own and have something better that was acceptable if the Museveni idea of the chaka-mchaka was not agreeable. People should have modified it to have, to cater for, to include the ideas of UPC, FDC, and others. When you go to Kenya, there is this program called the National Youth Service. The National Youth Service is a deliberate program, ideally orienting these people about their country, where their country has come from, the ethics, and so many things that are being taught under the National Youth Service. This is happening even in Ghana. So you realize that as a country, there is something that we missed while transiting to multi-party politics. But now that we are here under multi-party politics, what are the challenges? One of them is, just to answer Ochieno, one of them is the strong man syndrome in all of these political parties. The political party is surviving on the life of a founder. And that is very dangerous for a country. And that shows you that we have not grown into multipartism. Because under multipartism, the party must outgrow those that found it. And so that those that found it can sit and watch the Bryans be able to take the mantle beyond where they had stopped. Unfortunately, the challenge here is that when you look at all this confusion, you realize that when you remove Obote from the picture, the UPC gets into a lot of contradictions. When you remove Besigye from the leadership of the party, It leads to the rise of Katonga and formation of other factions, and you find that this becomes very problematic. When you look at even the contradictions between, as I said before, the first contradictions between Muntu and Besigye, even when Besigye left, he still brought his shadow behind power. Power is a creation of Besigye's politics against the Muntu idea, the Muntu way of governance. So you realize that these contradictions, whether sponsored or not, will be able to exist. And if they exist, the question should be how best should political parties be able to resolve this internally and also be able to outgrow those that formed them. I want to give you an example. Me as a person who has been in research and interfacing with FDC in iPod, one of the things I have always said that FDC is one of the serious parties. Why? Because it has never entertained indiscipline. When people departed and went to Muntu's new party and disagreed, and all those MPs, the Arikos, the Oseges in Teso there, who disagreed, who refused to support Poa and felt that Poa was not the right leader for them. When Poa became the FDC president, they had already stopped subscriptions of the party. And when the party realized that these people were no longer loyal to the political party, they were loyal to individuals, they refused to give them tickets for parliamentary positions. And where does that happen? Even in NRM, it does not happen. So at that point, for us who were working at the research department of NRM, we were able to appreciate that maybe FDC is outgrowing in terms of its ability to practice the laws and policies of multipartyism, so that people can know that a party is bigger than individuals. Unfortunately, when we thought maybe they are growing, we are back to ground zero, where the contradictions have risen again. New contradictions have risen. But at a personal level, as a researcher, I was able to appreciate that we must have parties stronger than individuals, so that we can be able to have a better country.
Yeah, that's interesting. But just on the last point, we still see NRM, of course, pushing behind Museveni, who, of course, eludes this same strongman stance. Do you
Strongman founder.
So, would you
Yes,
pass the same critique to your own party?
Well, I will not be able to. The point I'm making is that, yes, Museveni is a strong man, but I believe the conversations within the internal conversations will be able to address this question.
Okay.
And Museveni being a political scientist and somebody who has studied Nyerere for a long time, I am very confident that he may give a different approach, may bring a different approach to the Ugandan politics.
You believe really studied Nyerere?
Yes, I believe
Nyerere, on the advice of Milton Obote, was able to do what Obote couldn't do, and that's to retire early. Nyerere voluntarily retired and enabled other leaders. Mr. Museveni has taken more than 12 years longer than Nyerere.
The time of his departure does not necessarily matter to me.
So that one is that one is not read from Nyerere.
What matters to me is how he's going to leave the party beyond him. Yes. Yeah. But I believe that conversation is ongoing.
Thank you very much. Dr. Bireete, I would like to hear your insights on Mr. Otuko's submission, especially around the movement system, that perhaps it is something that we never gave a chance, an opportunity that was passed. Do you think that is the case, or is it the case that we have just failed at building a national liberal democracy that is multi-party in nature?
Well, there is a growing tendency, mainly by supporters of NRM, to try to drag Ugandans back into the movement system. Because what was the movement system? Is to say by law, you belong to the movement. Everybody belongs to the movement system. You don't have freedom of conscience. You don't have freedom of expression and
But they said
association.
there was more dissent.
I'm coming.
Yes, yes.
So if a law dictates that you belong here, so you don't have freedom of choice, you don't have freedom of conscience and expression, you must belong there. The movement system used symbols that are still being used by the NRM party.
Yes.
First is they maintained the name of the system. So constitutionally, however fraudulent it is as a political system of governance, constitutionally, if we said today we are going back to the movement system, which movement system is there to go back to? They took the color of the movement system. They took the name of the movement system and the ideology and branded it a political party. Even during the referendum, and we have shared that question here, the question that allegedly ushered back multi-party system was manipulated. Do you want us to let those who want to go from their parties to go? So meaning that it's us versus them. There is no nation. That manipulation also.
Augustine.
Yes. And spent taxpayers' money on such a fraudulent question. But because people wanted their freedom, they let it pass. So when you look today at the conduct, when Augustine talked about Chaka, I was a child, but very political alert. When NRM came to power, I was in P4, P5. When NRM came to power. But my father was politically very active, so I would follow. My father went for the first Chaka courses that he's referring to. And yes, he came back. He was even, we called him Zeikada. He was among the pioneers of that course. But he came back very disappointed because of the content that was being taught to people in the so-called ideological grounding. And many people might not know. So, in Bishenyi,
yes,
they were telling people, grassroots people, Spia Obote, Spia Cecilia Ogwara, Chumutobote, that was the kind of course that he's referring to. So it was saying, denounce multipartism, denounce these multipartists. During the first years of President Museveni, the biggest crime, I know now there is talk of terrorism, which is normally a trumped up thing for opposition, save for ADF.
Now the Bobi Wine is away, bombs are not in Kampala.
Yes, so save for a few acts of ADF.
yes, please.
So by then, the biggest crime somebody would commit was to be a supporter of multi-party politics. You would think multipartism, this so-and-so is a multipartist. It was like somebody who is diseased that you shouldn't even touch.
Ochieno.
So that was the ideology that he thinks should have built this country. I don't think so. So when you look at Chaka, NRM grabbed Chankwanzi. Chankwanzi is a leadership institute that belongs to the state, not NRM. But NRM has monopolized it to the extent that younger people might not know that that's a national institute for leadership that is facilitated by a taxpayer and should not be monopolized by NRM. And then maybe, I don't know whether Augustine knows, because the way he's looking at me.
He's young, Bambi.
I am aware. And I also know that
So ideally,
so many other people who are
ideally,
not necessarily
all political parties, all universities, all CSOs should be free to access the National Leadership Institute.
And indeed they are.
Who accesses?
If you write...
If people
Recently,
cannot access
there were head
Corona and
teachers.
State Square, how can you even dream of
Recently, there were
Chakwanzi?
head teachers.
We've
in
seen
Chakwanzi.
head
But at whose invitation? It must be at their invitation.
Yes.
And then they put in their funny camouflage, militarism. I was even asking one time on social media whether they have a one-size-fit-all or whether you go and now they are sharing. And the president wants to ban second hand. But they use second-hand in Changwanzi. Because what is the meaning of second-hand clothes? Is a cloth worn by somebody else.
Yes, all right,
In
yes.
Changwanzi, you wear second-hand event. So if you ban second-hand, are you going to procure uniforms for everyone all the
That's the
time?
point he's going to take back.
Let's point of information. Granted.
That across the world, whether in Ghana, whether in Israel, whether in our neighbors here in Kenya, those that have been doing ideological trainings, civic education, they put on the national uniform of the military. It may not necessarily be military, but something resembling to that direction.
Nigeria has a different
it is not
uniform
exclusive.
for national service.
It is not
It's not
exclusive.
military fatigue.
It is not exclusive to Uganda. It is not.
Do you pay?
Yes.
Maybe
Yes.
another piece
Yes.
of information I want from you. Do you pay to access Changwanzi?
No, you don't. You don't.
So
pay.
why do you make taxpayers pay for your so-called ideological things at NRA, at Changwanzi? Then you talk of fighting corruption.
No, interestingly, the NRM, as we speak now, is in the process of building its own ideological school.
No, for now, who picks
Different.
your bills?
No, different from
Who picks your
Changwanzi,
bills?
because Changwanzi is a government institution.
Mr. Tuko,
Public
let's not be
institution. It's a public-
diversionary.
yes.
Don't tell us about futuristic things. You are fed to build the
Dr.
house.
Bireete,
You even
proceed
gathered
on-
money.
on
Where
your
is
line,
the
yes.
NRM house? So tell us, do you pay? Why do you subject Ugandans to pick your NRM bills in Changwanzi?
No, but it's a government institution.
But you go to do your party agenda.
It is not only the party.
Okay. No,
Actually,
I'm
as we
asking
speak-
about going to do your party
As we
agenda.
speak, countries like South Sudan, DRC, Ethiopia, and others, Somalia, have been being trained in Changwanzi. So it's not necessarily an
Is that the answer to
So anyway, so the argument.
for why he's
if I
not
may
really getting
conclude-
it?
Let Dr. Bireete
If I
conclude.
may conclude,
The truth is, for example, if I invited my brother Brian, because I've invited many of my friends to go to Changwanzi, if I invited Brian, Brian will not come. And his reason will be his
So
opposition.
that's why Sudanese and Somalis are there.
So the argument
I
that
mean,
the argument that
in the
because
spirit of
there is
Pan-Africanism,
there is no
we-
mchaka grounding,
yes.
and NRM cannot fight corruption. I think they preach corruption in Changwanzi because if you take an example of Karamoja iron sheets, 24 ministers grabbed those iron sheets, including a number of MPs. So and they went to Changwanzi. They've been there numerous times. So if you use that as an argument,
yes.
then one can easily say that maybe you preach corruption in Changwanzi.
Yes. Doctor,
Yeah,
you
but-
can conclude on your
Yeah, but so if
initial
it
line.
comes, if it comes to the issue of, I think we need to discuss how to attain democracy as known by global standards and even defined in our constitution. There is an argument to try to minimize Uganda and portray it as a Stone Age country that cannot conceive basic concepts of democracy, and therefore this concept is foreign. We cannot
We're not
afford
ready.
it. It's not for ours. What is democracy? Government of the people, for the people, and by the people. How do you determine that government? Through elections. What do we need in elections? Proper, accurate arithmetic. Gambia went as a notch further and modernized the marble system. When people are coming to vote, they are given a stone, and when you throw it in, everybody hears that it has gone in, and they wait to count who has more stones and who doesn't. And then you reduce this business of Justice Byabakama with his predicted ballots. So what we have failed is accurate arithmetic to count, quantify the vote of the people, because the people who control the pillars of the state are not necessarily having majority of the will of the people. And they must manipulate that will of the people. In the end, we say this is democracy, we don't understand it. Because you want to manipulate the will of the people and put the arithmetic upside down. I think this hypocrisy needs to stop.
Thank you very much. And just to get back a little bit to the Forum for Democratic Change. What do you see as a way forward? I know it's still very blurry. There's a lot of dust. But what's the game plan? Of course, we saw Lukwago, His Excellency as Arias Lukwago now, who also doubles as a Lord Mayor. A lot of titles there. But, saying he has a 6-month plan to bring everyone together and try to forge a path forward. But what do you see as, the way forward for the FDC getting on from here?
FDC members should have a two-way approach. They should not lose the sight of their mission, but also, so it is going to become a fight for the party, but use the party, as you fight for the party, also fight Museveni, who is the main target. Don't be distracted by Nandara and power and go for smaller wars. Go for a bigger war. And of course, like bombs are being talked about, now that we have had delegates conference seat, it's better to actually show the world that FDC is in which side. Arrange, for example, you say, let's go to Ankole, let's hold a public meeting. I hope this time bombs won't be in Ankole. So we hold a public meeting and members come and have an input. And call on their leaders to really wish the power they don't have. If they remain in there, you don't have to fight with them. You can really, it's like if you have a vehicle and it collapses. Or you have a vehicle and which you but you have to cross. You park it and use the boat and go. You don't remain crying here saying, my vehicle can't go through the water. No. If FDC as a vehicle, it has crashed. We are checking whether the engine is still there. If the engine is not there and can no longer move, we can either buy another one or take to a mechanic. Now, where it is, it's at a mechanic level. The mechanic is the people. They will see whether it's still a viable vehicle to drive us to liberation. If it's not, since the mission is liberation, you leave it and use another means of transport. That's what I think. And I have even timelines on when I can discuss FDC and when I cannot discuss it. Yes, when that time comes, I want to discuss FDC again. If time comes and FDC is redeemable and we redeem it, then you can not to discuss FDC, we should be discussing Uganda. Because FDC was not formed to discuss FDC. FDC was formed to discuss and pave the way and the future for Uganda, not being discussed in Kwara conversations. But on what he says something about Chankwanza and me not going there. So how did I reach not going there? Because don't discuss that I will say I'm opposition, so I can't go there. Why can't I? If there's a national thing, why can't I go there? Because when I go to the supermarket, I pay tax. When I work, I still pay tax. My money is at NSSF, people are stealing it. And the people who steal money at NSSF are the ones who have been trained in Chankwanzi. The guy is stealing my money at NSSF. Actually, the ideologues who's Museveni and his brother calls a minister without power and goes to Kapeka to put on steal my money at NSSF.
Actually, can I just help you there, please? Actually, very interesting. When I was a younger man, at Makerere and Museveni had just landed, Chankwanzi on their landing was a prerequisite for heads of institutions. In fact, it was a prerequisite for public jobs. Yes, even Makerere entry. So how did it not sort out the mess of corruption, the system most rotten in our history under Museveni?
Yeah, thank you very much.
But anyway, you see, the DNA of NRM is stealing. So NRM can't preach against stealing. And to be deluded and lied that you go to Chankwanzi, you'll become a better citizen is not true. Actually, I'm a better citizen because I didn't go to Chankwanzi. Chankwanzi is some place where I think they open heads of people and then put rubbish and then release them. And then, not that they become they know they are conscientized, but the things they say, there are these things of saying, there's something they like saying about mindset change. When your mindset change,
it now has a ministry,
yes. Just not, it's like getting your head here and your legs are there. It's very funny. and never listen to mindset change from NIM. Never listen to Chankwanzi things. As I'm advising you as a young man, don't. This one knows what they do there. So if Nabanja comes to Chankwanzi, what Nabanja pumping into the brains of this man? Your brother and Nabanja, so what can Nabanja tell you? But you Chankwanzi into Nabanja, looking at her, and she's done mindset change of Nabanja. How that happen?
Thank you very much, Mr. Atuheire. It's funny because recently I was reading the report of from the Minister of General Duties on the performance of government. And I think the funds towards mindset change had the lowest outcome. It was actually ranked the least performing investment of government.
The budget is the mindset change.
But I'd like to move on to you, Mr. Ochieno. You said earlier that it's better for opposition to have one leader instead of all these sections. But just to delve deeper into that, the FDC saga, DP, UPC sagas, there are undertones of bribery or violence or strong arming, and the public is out there watching. Do you think eventually this is also an indictment on the opposition who are, preaching to Ugandans that they should be the ones leading the country? Don't you think the public seeing this actually weakens the opposition and maybe even demoralizes those who would have walked out from their business or the saloon or home to go and vote?
No, the response is a treatise, and I'm not sure if I can give it within the short period of time, particularly how important it is. But so I'll possibly deal with 10% of it. But we shouldn't lose out to Brian's second last submission. Brian's body language saddened me. This is a young man, absolutely representative of the majority of the youth of this country, partly then linked to your question, who gave their faith to political leaders, gave their faith to leaders in this country, including Museveni, who deceived them. In fact, Museveni dragged a series of 10, 8, 9-year-olds. I hope Augustine is not one of them, and rolled them into Luwero and gave them 1, 2, 3 sleepers and then took them to school and, and I don't know what it is. So, so killing of hope and the future for young people. So with the reemergence of multipartism, because I don't think I'll go into that, partly explain, but quite clearly, Asara, Museveni from 1971, 72, was quite clearly anti-multipartism. In Dar es Salaam it was that. I told another network the other day that...
he believes in one party state.
Yeah, so friends of... For information, Augustine, by the way. Friends of his who joined the original group that eventually turned into the Pronas, that's how the Yoga Dollars went into some of the things. They're genuinely people who were critiquing, investigating Marxism, Leninism, and all this ideological radical left thing. Some of them emerging from the 1968, 69 UPC fundamental radical progressive move to the left, but how better kind of stuff. So there were genuine conversations, and of course, the mainstream UPC was saying some of these stubborn little boys kind of stuff. So the boys and a few girls perhaps, but mainly boys. And so these guys moved away. So out of that, many of them, like my former member of parliament, late Osinde Wangwor and others, who later became in the government chief whip, fantastic government chief whip in Board 2 government, quite realized that Museveni had a mild dogmatic agenda of his, me, myself, and I, but in ideological polity, and so moved to the one-party kind of thing, no-nonsense, intolerant thing. So by 1975, for Nasa-ish, if you want to call it like that, it was really nearly lonely Museveni and a very tolerant Kategea, And that is why it's argued that by around when the opportunity for basically launching a liberation movement against Amin in 78 came, it was really for the rest was neither here nor there, Museveni and these other people. So stop at that. Then fast forward, come to 1979 when we got liberated. Forget about even the discussion in Moshi's, Augustine and Brian particularly, and you yourself, Ola. This guy was arguing for, no, elections and things like that. That's why I partly joined again the biases around the umbrella politics. I'm giving a background, but in quick summary, you know. And then came the 1980, once Lule had been dealt with, and then Binaisa sort of been dealt with, and then they went out as delegations from the interim administration to consult with the regional leaders for supporting the elections of 1980. I have one from authority of one of the members of the delegation, Dr. Moses Apilga can actually say that quite freely, who says that they went to Nyerere to brief him and also to solicit for support for this NCC, National Consultative Council. The whole country was for pluralist elections. And then they went to Kaunda, and they went to Samora Machel, you know, as the key particular, those three specifically. In all those cases, Museveni, one person in the entirety of the delegation, collective delegation, was arguing for no elections. And I'm told that it's in Mozambique, interestingly, where Samora, for knowing him, sort of course, Samora was also a Marxist-Leninist, you know, sort of nodded yes-ish kind of thing with Museveni. And this guy says, this is for the record, whether he was saying that out of respect for someone whom he knew and had been around with him, or because of the element of his own politics. But the point remains this, that Museveni's version of politics was alien to all these leaders, you know, and that's the point of Pastor said. This is important to whatever we are discussing now. Why? Meaning, even after the emergence of the challenges of an FDC, we need to understand Museveni did not come with the NRA thing to restore democracy of pluralist politics to build institutions. Why? It turns out that from 1986, once parties were banned, Augustine, by 1996 point that we're talking about, those are 10 years where political parties had been broken. You talk about this thing about the CA when it used to be the early CA where the parliament, where the decent political activists, this was a crop of post-independence leaders. You know, NRA eventually killed them. So we are now 30 years since those times. It's not surprising that the leaders that were natural leaders at the time faded off, some died. The leaders of your generation, many of them have not been given the space to grow and emerge. You can see how suffocated Brian feels, you know, in the space in which you do not have an opportunity to grow and to have a competitive environment. I'm saying that generally because to say that, look, Museveni's fault is to have killed institutions and killed possibilities of conversations and debate. When we were at high schools, you know, remember, I was a chairman of a debating club in primary 6. That is why Museveni cannot dare have a debate with me, you know. But which school debating competition do you take place? Credit to Sarah. Sarah, let me just take this diversion, if you don't mind. Sarah, as part of their organizations, conduct inter-university debating. Yes. And I've been lucky to be able to be asked to be one of the judges, you know. Part of the early debates that I went there, I was actually quite shocked by the crudeness of the quality of the lawlessness of this thing. But one of the things that the Sarahs have done in the last several years is to turn around the quality of national debate. And these guys need to be supported. The quality of national debate amongst young students, among young people. What are they? They're enabling possibilities for capacity to have this kind of engagement, you know, in terms of competition of opinions and ideas and how you navigate. That is how leaders emerge. That culture was killed. People like the Sarah sometimes, it's extremely important. So what I'm saying, beyond where we are, it is urgent that political parties, now quickly in a few minutes, political parties, you know, leaders of political parties, these few political parties, you know, wake up, take responsibility, re-examine themselves. I'm not necessarily saying that we need one opposition, but I'm definitely saying that at the moment we are too many and we don't need too many others. But beyond that, even amongst those of us who are around, I am rather anxious that none of us are emerging with a concrete program, concrete idea to bring us all together and to address the core thing of part dictatorship, but part giving Ugandans hope, including Augustine, a post-Museveni program in which people, including people in NRM, can say, look, these guys are talking. There is hope for a transition beyond Museveni, not breaking the legs of NRA people. And actually, that is the Uganda for which I don't mind being in. If anything, a Uganda beyond Museveni can only be a better Uganda. There is no worse Uganda that can ever appear after Museveni. But we need to make sure that we clearly articulate that to Ugandans. And that Uganda needs a clear leadership. And that leadership must come from political parties and political leaders. It's urgent that we achieve that.
Yes.
Part of that is resolving the issues in FDC, whichever direction.
Thank you very much. And I'd like to bring that to you, Mr. Otuko. He brings up an important issue, which is transition, and it has become an inevitable topic. In the past, people could push it away, but nowadays, I think even within the NRM, people are starting to open their minds to this. You know, in the light of the chaos in opposition, how is NRM? Because NRM does have a stake in the future of the country, whether we like it or not, and in transition. How does NRM, you know, put all of this together as they plan for the future, or as we collectively plan for the future of Uganda?
Well, thank you very much. I want to thank him for the issues, and Sarah. My brother there is worried that if issues are not resolved in his political party, I think he may find some other home.
No.
Do you welcome him?
I want the bigger agenda.
Yeah.
I am looking at the bigger agenda.
Yeah, so
We shall buy a Benz. We have been having FDCs.
in my opinion, transition in Uganda is catered for under the Constitution
Which act?
and under the Multi-Party and Organizations Act. Why do I say so? That, first of all, under multipartism, every political party takes care of its transition before you talk about the national campaigns. But the unfortunate bit of it is that most of the time when I listen to conversations, when we talk about transition, there are those that think Museveni should step aside, and that's what they call transition. Or there are those that think Museveni should be in power, or should not be in power, and that's what they call transition. But in my own...
There are others who think he should not die in power.
There's also that group. But that, even if he died in power, even if he died in power, transition, in the event a president, a governing president dies, transition is catered for.
But it has never happened in Uganda.
Well, I mean, I'm saying even if, because it has never happened, because you never know one time in Uganda it will happen. So the point I'm making is that transition is actually catered for. It is something that shouldn't even worry anyone. Why? Because within NRM, to transition from Museveni to another person should be our problem as a political party. Why? Because we would want to get the best product that we would be able to present to compete with the products that the opposition are going to present. And that should be the conversation that goes on within the NRM, and say, we need guidance, we need that in the event that the current leader of the political party decides to step aside or step down or retire, we should be able to say how many of the leaders within the political party are capable to fill the gap that he will leave behind. In fact, that becomes an NRM problem. It shouldn't even be a Ugandan problem. Why? Because what becomes a Ugandan problem is the crisis that we see in all the political parties. We've seen a transition taking place where a party chairman is disagreeing with a party president and a secretary general. Should we call that a transition? The answer is no. So this is a Ugandan problem.
Yes.
That we must be able to deal with in these various political parties. Because when we grow as political parties, then the question of who becomes the next president will not worry us. Why? Because just imagine that group that is fighting now takes over government. What type of country are we going to have? Because if they are fighting, I don't know how much money, some people are saying in billions, others are saying 360 million. these allegations that they have and counter allegations they have against each other. It's about money. So what if this group takes over the leadership of this country? What will happen? What if DP takes over the leadership of this country as it is now? What will happen to this country?
Where is it?
What if UPC, as it is now, takes over the leadership of this country? So the point I'm making is that we have a bigger responsibility as Ugandans to deal with the quality of politics in our respective political parties so that we can be able to have quality leadership beyond Museveni that we can be able to depend on.
All right.
That's what I can say.
All right, thank you very much. Our time is running out, but I would like to do a round of
Without my submission.
No,
I said
you-
it today, I'm being excluded.
Uh,
Just once me.
you have my time.
Oh, so sorry.
No. No, I will give you an allowance of 3 minutes.
No. I will conclude after the others. I have to make my submission.
Okay.
You are sure that I'm not a person to be marginalized.
Sarah,
All right,
There's one of disadvantage already. You know,
Yeah.
Gender
representation, yes.
minority, but I will not allow marginalization beyond that.
But
So I want to pick on the issue of whether Museveni's transition from Museveni is a national question or should be a question of NRM.
yes.
Museveni has kept himself in power by destroying the constitution. Remove of term limits, remove of age limit. These are national questions. He did not destroy the constitution of NRM because the constitution of NRM is none of our business. So when you destroy the 1995 consensus to keep yourself in power by removing term limits, you destroy age limit by raping the temple of democracy, deploying the army to beat up MPs. Some of them are still in crutches
Yes.
up to today. So you destroy the 1995 consensus, you destroy or you abuse the temple of democracy to keep in power. Every election, you deploy military to rig elections. The last elections, the rigging degenerated into kidnaps and torture through drones that are still ongoing. So when President Museveni can leave power, it's a national question. It's not a question of NRM. He's using the instruments of the pillars of the state to keep himself in power. He's using taxpayers' money to keep himself in power.
Yes.
NRM people don't even pay party subscription because they know they have access to the treasury. They don't. So the question of when President Museveni can retire is a national crisis. It's not even a question. So when you ask whether we have mechanisms for transition, yes, 2 of the mechanisms have been destroyed, as I've stated. So what we are remaining with is only elections that are abused on a daily basis. So you can say that according to the 1995 consensus, we had 3 mechanisms for peaceful transition of power. One is free and fair credible elections that we cannot achieve now because according to the convention of Dr. Tango Doi, people in NRM Secretariat have bought UPDF uniforms, then they wear them and go and behave in a sagare manner, politicking ballots, chasing people from every election in polling stations. They did it in your home area in Soroti, did it on Oyam, did it everywhere. So we have the NRM is vulgarizing elections to attain their fraudulent majority. The second element of peaceful transition of power was term limits. Can you rule for a maximum of 10 years and go? Destroyed through the famous 5 million bribe to MPs then. Age limits. When you attain this age, can you live? Destroyed through rape on parliament. Deploying SFC to beat up the people's representatives. So we don't have mechanisms for peaceful transfer of power. When you go back to the preamble of the Constitution, the problem of Uganda is very clear. Turbulent history of civil and political instability. President Museveni, in his own book, the only question he resolved correctly the problem of Africa. Our leaders who stay in power for too long. When he got caught up in his own philosophy against his selfishness, then he tried to amend that without elections. But the point had been made. And this is the problem of Africa. It is the problem of Uganda. And that's why we have re-emergence of coups. If the pillars of the state in this country were not under state capture, you could not rule out the question of another coup in this country. So therefore, we must debate transition. We must have debates on transition series in this country. We must prepare the country for transition. Because this country does not belong to individuals. It belongs to everybody.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bireete. And I hope that settles the
discrimination.
The quarrel
The
between
marginalization.
you and
The
me.
the marginalization.
The rest we shall deal with it.
The marginalization.
Yeah, but I'd like to
And
start.
the guys did not defend me.
You have to defend yourself.
We're sorry. We're
I'd
sorry.
like to- I'd like
we know
to-
we are beneficiaries.
I'd
Sorry to say.
like to just some parting remarks, and I would start with you, Mr. Atuheire.
Sarah ended by saying that the country has belonged to a single individual. Museveni looks at Uganda like his farm. That's why he plans to give it to his son. He might even make a will where. and that's what we are fighting
And
against.
bequeath the power to his son.
Yes, a will. The UPDF soldiers graze cows on his farm. His Shamba boys are UPDF soldiers.
Is that true, by the way?
That's how you got. So that's how things are. That's how bad they are. So and they are the
Augustine doesn't know that. So.
and they are the he knows. That's what he won't deny. So it's that personal. And people are feeling it's a kingdom. They want to make Uganda into a kingdom. That's why Museveni calls Bataka of Uganda and gives them land, the owners of land.
But that land belongs to Uganda.
That's what he's doing. So wants to destroy every institution, destroy FDC, destroy Uganda, destroy Bunyoro, get Toro into your pocket. If Rwenzuru fails, beat them, kill them, make Uganda into one harmonious kingdom, managed by his family. That's what is happening. That's what I think. But lastly, there is no opposition government. The word opposition comes out of a democratic process. You go and vote, and some go on opposition, and others go on government. Now in Uganda, bagamba nti eyawangula si afuga. The one who won is not the one in power. The one who is in power is not the one who won. Until the one who wins becomes president, we shall discuss opposition and government.
So what are you as of today?
As of today, I'm in a struggle to liberate Uganda, to have a wangudenga ya afuga. That's what I am in.
Thank you, Mr. Atuheire, and it was a pleasure having you today. Especially having dug yourself from the trenches to come out here. And Mr. Ochieno, your parting remarks.
Mine is that really I hope Mr. Museveni understands the passions of the people of this country, particularly the fact that they've been very patient with him. And while much as Sarah has said, no, Augustine, the transition in this country is a matter for all of us, particularly because Mr. Museveni has been in power for 40 years against the will of these people. Nobody gave Mr. Museveni the mandate to go to State House in 1986, let alone the fact that he has questions to answer of what he did in Luwero and how he ended up in Luwero. But that it was against the UPC government, which was treasonable. But we've forgiven him. I'm not quite sure whether we want to go there. And in my future role as president of the Uganda People's Congress, I'm not sure whether that will be the focus. The focus will be much more about a national reconciliation. But really, general from 1986, the fact that Museveni sat there, imposed himself, created an NRC in 1989, went through the 1995 constitution. Ugandans across the political divide gave him a benefit of doubt and hope, including 1996. Went ahead, 1995, under that constitution, went ahead and abused it, and even then go ahead and rep his own constitution, as Sarah says. Tells you that no, the future of this country has been held hostage by Mr. Museveni, and the sooner he recognizes that patience, even whatever the extreme, has an end. So for that reason, it's not accurate to say that the transition in this country is a matter for NRA, NRM members. No, it's a matter for the citizens of this country. In fact, the very passionate citizens of this country, because if anything, NRA has got huge cases to answer under its reign, huge cases of accusations of genocide in the north, huge cases of accusations of genocide in the east, including the Mukura massacre, the Kasese massacres, and now the plunder of our national resources. Forget about the rep of our institutions. The plunder of our national monies, in terms of corruption and everything, is extraordinary. The breakdown of our institutions. The thing is that I don't know how we can persuade Mr. Museveni and leaders and people around him to rethink and then to begin to see people like us as voices of reason around whom he could say, how do you see we could go together on some of these things to help you, help you, in others, give him a soft landing as an exit route, rather than thinking that, well, he owes us an opportunity to transit beyond himself. And transition generally is also from one very horrific situation to another. But sometimes the transition could be from one very good thing to another. But those involves the people, the citizens of the country, like Sarah, the constitutional lawyer will tell you that, look, power belongs to the people. So the people who, whose power was usurped by Museveni in 1986 to date, have got a right to say what happens post Museveni. And that particularly, why I'm extending that is, that happens, and while political parties that should otherwise have the opportunity to go ahead and freely and democratically go and persuade the citizens of this country with their policies and programs to be elected into those majority positions, as Brian said, are the very same people who now find themselves with dubious money deals organized and finding themselves back to State House, because that's the conversation we're having today, back to State House, buying off people to strategically keep this guy in power. It is shambolic, it's shameful. The Museveni of 1971, 72, possibly even 1980, when he was trying to pretend in Mwiri that he was somebody worthy of being supported, when when I gave him some listening, he should be ashamed of himself. But no, I think you're right, and where I think the point we missed, Sarah, also, is at the end of the day in political parties, Brian, away from Museveni, and in a way possible, that's where Augustine was also right. The burden of responsibilities minus Museveni, lies with us. We need to become much selfless. We need to take out our personal egos, but sometimes even possibly our political ideologies, and look at the bigger national picture. What is it that is happening in Uganda People's Congress, where certain people cannot see beyond an obvious enemy from without? Why is it that perhaps people in, say, FDC cannot see beyond an obvious lord? Part of that is necessarily a matter of democracy. That when we identify a dubious guy down there, the majority of the membership simply come and say no, and the majority of the members take the day constitutionally. I hope that will happen in FDC, and I hope when that happens, you guys will find us in Uganda People's Congress ready to work with yourselves. But in the event that actually you guys fail, the political party that most of you came from is Uganda People's Congress. I will be leading it, and we'll be working together and make sure that Ugandans visit that Chankwanzi and ensure that Chankwanzi, whatever is happening in Chankwanzi, is returned to the citizens of this country.
Thank you, Mr. Ochieno. I would like to give an opportunity to Mr. Otuko some parting remarks.
Yes, maybe I need to state this again. I said the transition question is so much of concern, yes, to all of us, but most particularly to individual political parties. I was coming from the narrative that if we cannot successfully manage transitions within our individual political parties, how are we going to manage the national transition? But I also said the act, the Multi-Party and Organizations Act clearly gives us an opportunity as political parties. It provides us a platform that every political party takes their bull to the market. Then the buyer chooses the best and will be able to buy that one. So in other words, for us to transit beyond Museveni, it is the people and the product that we present to the people that will matter on going forward.
Yes.
In terms of who will transit, who will succeed Museveni, whether from within NRM. Of course, NRM will have to discuss the transition within itself. Who will be the next national chairman? Then beyond the NRM transition within itself, there will be the national transition, which will now be a question of all Ugandans. And this question is what I was saying. It is all our responsibility to ensure that we improve the politics, the quality of politics within our respective political parties. And I think that's what I was, the point I was making.
Yeah.
The other thing probably that I want to say, we're looking at the FDC in particular, this is my prediction as an individual, that
In a minute,
in
please.
a minute, this is my prediction, that in the event that FDC fails to resolve their issues, one of the factions will join NUP.
No.
Yes, to me that's my prediction, and I think when I listened,
What about the other faction?
when I particularly listened to Amuriat yesterday on KFM, he categorically put it that actually they never wanted him to stand as a president. They wanted them to fall behind the NUP candidate in the last election. And I think he felt that was betraying FDC as a political party because it was not discussed at the NEC. And these were his statements. He said if there was any decision to support the NUP candidate in the last election.
How did he become a candidate?
No, I mean...
People don't ask those questions. How did he become a candidate? Next act, code a roadmap.
So I am giving you verbatim from...
He's like I wasn't
from KFM. Yes. So you can be able to read that actually what is bringing division within the FDC, it is failure to agree on certain ideas. Probably there are those that don't agree with the Bobi Wine's kind of method of work. Just like I think we are in the similar situation of BCJ versus Muntu. Now the Nandala and Amuriat do not agree with that faction that feels they can be able to join to work with the NUP. So I think as I end, that going forward, we still have a big task as Ugandans to build political parties that can live beyond those that founded them.
Thank you very much. And it was a great honor having you today.
Thank you.
Yes. Dr. Bireete, finally.
Discriminated.
Finally,
just conclude on the issue of FDC. Mr. Otuko says one of the factions will go to NUP. He didn't say his prediction of
the other faction.
Where does it go?
Actually, go to FDC.
So maybe that's the faction that they vote. But that concluded the debate.
Yes.
President Museveni can disorganize parties. He can buy off a few leaders, but he cannot finish opposition because the people who are seeking change are Ugandans, and he cannot buy all of them. Buying off Najana Nkumbi does not mean buying off FDC supporters. What he has now in his possession is Najana Nkumbi and the three leaders. He doesn't have a party. The party is not a building. The party is not the leaders. The spirit of the party is the people. My message to Ugandans, if leaders sell off, ignore them, write them on, remain focused on the prize. Peaceful change for Uganda.
Thank you very much, Doctor. And it was a great pleasure hosting all of you today. For our dear viewers, I hope it was as rich for you as it was for me, learning a lot. Of course, today we delved into the issues around the Forum for Democratic Change. But as you can see, these issues cross-cut all sectors of our governance, our democracy, and our collective future which we continue to strive through, and also our humble contribution as Civic Space TV to bring these conversations to light. So please share widely and make sure this reaches as many people as you can reach. Thank you very much. It was a great honor hosting you today. I remain Okot Olaa. Till next time.